My name is Chris Santiago, and I'm the VP of Solutions Engineering here at Unravel Data. I've had the luxury of working with some of the largest data customers harness the power of data platforms like Databricks. And for today's topic, or today's webinar, we're going to be discussing FinOps best practices, balancing performance and cost for Databricks. In this webinar, I'm going to talk to you about exactly how organizations are trying to balance this today between cost and performance. Then we're going to talk about some of the gaps, more specifically the FinOps teams, some of the challenges that they get while trying to have a very performant platform on Databricks, but also be cost effective. And then I'm going to show you a day in the life of how Unravel addresses these problems and challenges to equip FinOps and development teams to get the best in breed when it comes to performance and cost for Databricks. So let's actually go right into what these teams really care about. And this is really where the crux of a lot of organizations that I work with today face when trying to balance cost and performance. Simply put, FinOps teams care about cost. I think that's a given. But things that they care about more specifically would be to make sure that budgets that are allocated to specific data projects are online and to their budgets. They also want to have better cost predictability. So nobody likes to get surprised at night that they got a query that cost 6 figures last night. Countless horror stories I've heard from that standpoint. And that really keeps the FinOps teams up at night. They also want to make sure, or at least they have, they're assuming that the app teams, so the users of these data products, are doing the responsible thing. Things such as turning off unused resources or sizing jobs appropriately so that way the resources that the organization is paying for is being used in an effective way. That's what FinOps teams care about, cost. Now, let's talk about the app teams and what they really care about. Let's be honest here. They really care about performance. So making sure that the SLAs of their jobs that they've created are being met. Making sure that their pipelines are not failing because nobody likes to be woken up at night as well on the app teams to debug maybe some jobs that are failing, more specifically at the code. What they'll also do too is they'll size things appropriately on what they think is going to give the best performance. So things such as using always on clusters. So it doesn't matter if the usage is actually being done 24/7. I just don't want to wait for clusters to get spun up. Or maybe they're choosing the beefier nodes, the ones that cost more, the ones that have more DBUs, because they want to make sure that their jobs are not failing. Or maybe they may add more workers to their compute clusters because they want to make sure that, hey, if I double my resources, well, then that should actually reduce my time in half. Are they doing the responsible things from a cost perspective? Not necessarily. And that's where a lot of the challenges that FinOps teams face today because of this conundrum. Now, let's face it. FinOps teams, especially if you're some of you folks that maybe in this webinar might be part of a FinOps team as well. A lot of customers that I deal with, they come from finance backgrounds. They may have some folks that are technical, but that's not the general consensus from a FinOps standpoint. And really, they lack the technical knowledge to understand where the inefficiencies are and how big these inefficiencies are. So a lot of times, if FinOps teams get a bill and they see a spike, they'll go to those teams. And let's face it, they'll get excuses. Hey, this is an executive dashboard that if it doesn't meet the SLA, everybody's in trouble. Or hey, I've got these data pipelines that manage provide data to some of our external customers, and we get fined if that data is not ready for our end users. All probably valid excuses. Also, it justifies why they're choosing performance over cost. But FinOps teams are running blind. How can they fact check that the app teams are doing the responsible things, but also making sure that they're not affecting things from a performance standpoint? So being able to do that fact checking is a challenge for FinOps teams. Now, let's just say there are some obvious things. Maybe there is a pipeline that was brought in from a legacy standpoint. They know that there are some types of inefficiencies, but maybe there was a round of layoffs recently, or there's teams that have been asked to take on more additional responsibilities. So the onus or the time that they want to spend on is more on creating and generating revenue, not necessarily going back into code and maybe finding inefficiencies. And so a lot of struggles that I see a lot of organizations bring up when they try to do some sort of cost optimization initiatives is the fact that nobody has time for this. And even if they did, there's no guarantee that we're going to even find inefficiencies enough for us to actually make an impact to the bottom line. And unfortunately, what this leads to are organizations that end up doing nothing. And so the risk of spending the time to find where these inefficiencies are in their minds outweigh whatever the risk of maybe finding inefficiencies and netting out some sort of savings. And so you see a lot of organizations actually get bottlenecked just on this because of the perceived lack of time it will take to do an end-to-end analysis of where the inefficiencies are across the organization. Last but not least, with all of this not being in place, the challenge for FinOps teams is actually setting up some sort of governance and guardrails to enforce responsible usage. So all these points that I'm talking about above, really, I know that the team organizations really want to do well with these very powerful data platforms. They don't understand where inefficiencies are. They don't understand the impact of actually what they could actually unlock if they were to address these inefficiencies. And without those, how can you enforce accountability to the end users, the app teams, to make sure that they are doing the right things and maybe even doing a shift left mentality? Those things go to the wayside if FinOps teams are not equipped with these types of insights. Now, what if I told you there was a tool that made it easy for devs to not only maximize their jobs for performance, but also cost, but also give this all these insights to the FinOps team so they could do their job and actually sleep soundly at night? Well, that's where Unravel comes in. And so what I'm going to do here next is pull in my Unravel interface. And what you're seeing here right now is Unravel for Databricks. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into this workflows tab. And what you're seeing here are jobs that app teams are going to create. And in this case, they're scheduled. So they're repeated jobs. So think of this as like the data pipelines that are powering the executive dashboards to make some critical business decisions. Now, this is going to be, this view is really helpful for a number of teams. So right now I'm going to put on my app team, my developer hat on. And what I'm seeing here is each row is a list of jobs. So I can see here things such as the job name. I can go and understand the runs. We'll save that for another demo. We can see the amount of times it ran. And so we get some like good informational stuff here. But I'll call your attention onto this column next. It's this insight type. What this is actually saying is that we have, out of the 5 jobs, 5 of them were over provisioned. 3 of them were bottlenecks. Now, as I started my webinar here, I had mentioned that the app teams, they care about performance. And so when I install Unravel, when I start having a conversation with app teams, the first thing that will gravitate towards them is not really over provisioned, which is more of a cost saving kind of exercise. They'll focus in on the bottlenecks. And if I go up here, just to give a good general sense of what we would consider a bottleneck inefficiency, this would be things such as driver contention, which we'll actually dive in here shortly. Things where there's like some high I/O event. So maybe some external data source that's taking a long time. Maybe it's the way that SQL was written, or maybe there was some task queue. These are things that would impact performance and also impact cost as well. So what I want to do next here is I still have my app team hat on, and maybe I own this job, and I come in to Unravel and I see, wait, I didn't realize that I even had an efficiency to begin with. Let me see what Unravel has to say. What I can do is go ahead and click on this bottleneck. And what you're seeing here right now, I'm going to move here to the summary tab first, is really just this is where Unravel's built-in, purpose-built AI comes in. What we're showing here is that first, Unravel has proactively identified there is an inefficiency. We saw that in the previous screen. Unravel's going to take that next step further and actually do the end-to-end analysis on first, here's the problem, right? So driver contention. For the non-technical folks on the call or this webinar, this really is where the driver, which is the main node in this case, is doing all the work, and it's not taking advantage of some of the other worker nodes. So think about it as that one person that's doing all the job for a team of 5, right? That's driver contention, kind of. Now, down here below, we'll actually revisit it here shortly, but down here below, you got the problem statement. And so this is, again, where Unravel's analysis comes in. And it wants to break this down in a very simple to follow text, right? So here we're seeing this job on this workspace has a contention issue with the driver, comprising of 82% of the total execution time. So going back to my analogy about the one person doing all the work for a team of 5, that one person is doing all the work for 82% of the time. And the rest of the 18% is when the other teams maybe decide to work, right? I probably could have a better example there, but you guys get the example. You guys get where I'm coming from. But so here's the problem statement. And you can see why this would affect performance, right? So the power of Databricks is we can use some parallelism, and so that we can actually have 1 or 2 workers, 3 workers, 5 workers. You can have all these things working in parallel. But if there's something in the code that's actually forcing the cluster to only work on the main driver, that's going to be a bottleneck. We're not taking advantage of the parallelism. And so this becomes a problem where folks tend to think about, hey, I'm just going to add double the workers or triple the workers and expect this linear kind of performance, and they don't see it. This is one of the problems where I see a lot, and Unravel's proactively identifying it. And we've got some scenarios here. Here we can see that the majority of operations are performed on the driver only, and some more information here. So the problem statement is very clear to the developer who is trying to solve for performance challenges. Now, what they can do next is go into this remediation tab. And what this is actually doing is, think of this as like an action card. And what it's doing is it's actually saying, hey, in your code, we've noticed that you had this driver contention. And you know what? Here's some remediation steps that you can do. So we'll really focus here on this one. Driver code, where it has some heavy, we can detect that there was some Python operations here. And we also noticed that there was this toPandas operation. And we're suggesting to use this pandas API, which avoids collecting all the data at the driver. And really what this is trying to do is really take into account that things that are causing this driver contention, we're making it so easy for the developer to come in here and actually go ahead and just replace this code line to this to reduce that driver contention. So that way we can actually start taking advantage of the parallelism. And in the case of a app team developer, this will help improve performance because now we've got that parallelism going on. But it also has another downstream effect as well. Here we can actually see the cost of runs. So this is the number of runs because these are scheduled jobs. You can see the average cost of the run. But we're also doing here is we're forecasting a projected saving as well. And that's pretty powerful And for my next point here is I'm going to go move back here into the workflow tab here. And if you go and start looking at some of these additional columns here, we're seeing that total cost. So this is what's already being paid, right? You've got untapped savings, and that's that 69 cents. So this is basically translating, if you were to take into account the bottlenecks here, there's also some over provisioned here as well. You could unlock 69 cents of savings. Then you've got this realized savings, and right now it's at 0. And what this is telling me is that the recommendations were not applied. Now, I'm going to take a step back here. This is pretty powerful stuff, and it might not come jump out to you as how impactful this is, but this is something that really helps the FinOps teams. So now I'm going to put on my FinOps team hat now, and now I'm going to come into the same view, and I'm going to see the same stuff that we see here, but I'm going to actually start gravitating towards this. What I'm going to see here is this 79 cents. This is going to, if you aggregate all the jobs, this is going to equal to what I'm seeing in my bill. But they don't have this. This particular KPI right here at the job level is essentially telling me the cost of doing nothing is actually 69 cents. We could actually potentially bring this down to 10 cents a job if we were to actually act on this. And if we wanted to track and actually hold folks accountable for actually doing this, there's also logic built into Unravel to do that as well. And that's where the $0 is. And so for a FinOps team, what they can do is they can actually take this information and actually do some really interesting things on this. And so I'll give you one or two examples. So we've had a large shipping organization where they had a lot of new developers come in, especially during the time of COVID. And the challenge was that they were doing, there was a shiny new tool, Databricks. They were doing all these things, not really understanding the intricacies of responsible behavior when it comes to using this very powerful tech. And they had massive cost overruns. And so what they did was they wanted to be able to understand what is the impact of actually addressing some of these inefficiencies that are essentially being hand-fed through Unravel. And from there, we can actually start creating dashboards off of the information collected here to create what they call a wall of fame in this situation. And in order to make it onto this wall of fame, what you needed to do was actually make these recommendations, actualize it, so realized savings really starts coming up here, and then really just start showing, okay, who is actually unlocking the most savings at the organization. What that did was it really gamified these savings. And more importantly, it provided visibility to the folks that were really saving and saving some of the costs when it comes to doing the right thing about their jobs. And honestly, they were also, at this particular example, this organization actually, were incentivizing being on the Wall of Fame as well. But what this did was it really helped drive accountability to the app teams. You will hear a lot of folks talking about like this shift left mentality, which can mean a multitude of things. But shift left mentality for a lot of organizations is let's fix the problems at the code level. Whether it's inefficient that's driving performance challenges, whether it's inefficiencies that's bringing up cost overruns, whatever it is, let's actually address this during code. And so that way, as things start moving into the higher environments like production, you have a downstream effect in terms of fixing things before it actually makes it into some of like the more critical data-heavy workloads. And that's where we can really start driving this shift left mentality for a lot of organizations. In fact, what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to go into this cost explorer. I'm going to log back in, and I'm going to go and point your attention to this trends tab. Now, what you're seeing here is a very simple trend tab in my very small demo environment here. This is breaking down by day, but I actually wanted to call your attention on the different types of bars here. So that gray bar, which is what I'm hovering over here, is what FinOps teams already have for the most part. Tracking daily consumption. Right now, I'm at the enterprise level, so all of the workspaces. And so this should track to what you're seeing in your bill today. But what's missing is this untapped savings. This is that untapped savings that we were seeing in that workflow tab before. And this is where this becomes very powerful for FinOps teams, because now they can really just start to understand where the inefficiencies are. And that helps equip them to have the tough conversations with some of the data teams that may be not that efficient with their usage. That gives them, I've seen customers use this to really enforce proper behavior with enforcement. So things such as, hey, maybe we want to create a chargeback model. And that chargeback model is also going to take into account the inefficiencies that are being detected from Unravel. And oh, by the way, all you need to do is just have your end users use Unravel to actualize these inefficiencies. That's been very, very helpful for folks that really need to, that report up to the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, giving them the ammo for them to actually have these tough conversations with a very technical tool in Databricks, and actually saying, hey, there is inefficiencies. I'm actually quantifying it now, and now I'm holding you accountable for it. Now that's powerful. And that's what we want to do. And that's what we empower organizations, FinOps teams more specifically, to making sure that they have a good understanding of where cost is trending, even better understanding of, hey, if we actually use some of these optimizations or actualize some of these optimizations, we can actually bring costs more into a linear as opposed to exponential growth. And this also helps pay dividends for folks where they have an upcoming renewal coming up and they want to make sure that they are sizing things appropriately based on current usage plus identifying where the inefficiencies are. So today we've covered the challenges of balancing cost and performance in the context of the different personas. We talked about how this really impacts the FinOps teams because they really are handicapped because this is Databricks is a very complex, can be a very complex data stack, but making it easy for us to really quantify where these inefficiencies are really helps make them push accountability towards the organizations as well. And ultimately, make sure that we can get best of both worlds. Make sure that we're getting a very performant Databricks stack, but at the same time, making sure that costs are in check. With that, looking at the time, should start wrapping up here. So I'm going to look to the chat section here to answer some of the questions. The first one here is, how can I predict my Databricks platform costs and create more accurate budgets? Do I have my screen? Yeah, I do. Okay. So what I'll do, or how I'll answer that is actually with this is actually this Cost Explorer, this trends view that you're seeing here right now. Really what we want to be able to do is actually provide better cost predictability. And I don't have a chart here that you're seeing here on the screen that may be growing exponentially, but say that you do. Maybe that is what you're seeing as you're tracking costs. And as a FinOps organization, you really want better cost predictability. Well, with that, if we can actually identify where the untapped savings are, we can actually help flatten that curve. So it's not exponential and it's a little bit more flat from that perspective. And once we can get to that side, then we can really get the comfort level for FinOps teams to get really comfortable on better cost predictability. So that way they can really help define true budgets, but at the same time, hold folks accountable if they are being irresponsible with the resources that they're using. The next question here, how can engineers help control Databricks costs? That, my friend, is by going into using some of these metrics that Unravel provides from within our platform, by understanding where the quantified opportunity costs of actually addressing some of these inefficiencies are, and then also tracking to say, are they actually realizing the cost from that standpoint? What this is really doing is actually holding the app teams accountable to make sure that they're making the right responsible decisions when they're running their jobs that will both be cost effective, but at the same time, make sure that their jobs are meeting the SLAs that they need. The third one here, what is a cost cleansed day and how can I advocate for or implement something similar? Cost cleanse day. So, we've had an organization, I don't think they called it a cost cleanse day, but yeah, what they were doing is dedicating like a day or a few days on optimizing and trying to identify where some of the cost drivers are, and actually realize it to save the organization some real money. The reason why they did it as a cost cleansing days or a preset set of days is they wanted to reserve a number of days for their app teams because, hey, let's face it, companies are in the business of making and generating revenue, and a great way for us or for organizations to shed light on, hey, this is actually important. This is an important initiative. Is actually dedicate a few days out of the year for cost cleansing. What that does is it first provides visibility into, hey, there are things that are being inefficient, so let's identify that. Let's actually save some costs. So that's a benefit for the business. But what this also did too was it actually helped bring shed lights on maybe it's a developer that continually did very behaviors that were really just cost prohibitive, and having them actually take a step back and actually shed a light on, hey, some of these things are inefficient. You actually got to address it. What that did was, well, one, net out the savings from that cost cleansing initiative. But more importantly, what that did was it really showed that, hey, I should actually fix this for moving forward. So it had a downstream effect. And we started seeing this at this customer environment where you started seeing less and less inefficiencies because they know when they were creating their new code not to do the same thing over and over, because they saw in Unravel that they had some inefficiencies that were identified. And so, that gives a good example of a cost cleansing day. I think that's a great way to start for an organization if you're really trying to promote a cost conscious culture. But I would say the longer sustaining way is really pushing this through governance. And, really, whether it's a wall of fame, wall of shame, or, hey, if you are really inefficient, you're going to actually spend more money from your budget, whatever it may be, you need the insights to be able to quantify what those inefficiencies and what that impact is. And that's what Unravel can do for you. I'll leave you, I'm looking at my time here. I'll leave you with this as my call to action for you, for the folks who have joined this webinar. So if you think the things that are interesting that I've been talking about, well, you can actually get your free Databricks health check today by visiting unraveldata.com/databricks-health-check-request. That'll provide you the ability to explore deeper some of the things and some of the topics that we had talked about today, but also unlock 50% more workloads for the same budget, identify and eliminate wasted spend on not only computing, but storage as well, and also just increase the productivity of your data teams by automating some of these repetitive tasks. And we've only scratched the surface with today's topics. I hope that, if you're interested, go ahead and do this. It's free, no cost to you, low risk, or no risk actually, for you to get started with the Databricks. And thank you for your time. Again, my name is Chris Santiago, and see you on the next webinar. Thank you.